I feel like we're in this awkward state where nobody knows what the other person wants to do or is willing to do. How do we get past this?
Yeah, it's a great question, Adam, because we're in a state of limbo. When I grew up in the '60s, it was mostly handshakes. Right before the game, you played basketball, you shook hands with the other players, and then all of a sudden, the '70s, it became the high five,
Right?
and even amongst athletes, we became a lot more tactile. We into the '80s, into the '90s, you look at how much more we hug each other as athletes and as players, and so forth, with just abandon. Where in the '50s and '60s, if you gave a guy a pat on the back, coming back into the huddle, that was considered a lot then. And so I bring that up because our greeting styles have changed over time. we I mean, nowadays, most of my buddies, we just give a hug. I mean, the old days of a handshake or anything like that. But now with the coronavirus, a lot of people have concerns. My mother, who is very elderly, that's I'm not so much concerned about me as I'm concerned about would I transfer something to her, and people with children. So I think we're in transition. There never has been one greeting style. We know from studies of primates that primates have always reached out to each other finger first. I mean, a lot of people said, well, we did that to demonstrate if we had a weapon. We didn't need that. We could
Right.
we could figure out if it's not like they had concealed weapons
Right.
70,000 years ago. Those were pretty big weapons. So don't come to me with that. The fact is that we have always reached out to each other with hands. I think what's going to happen is we now are going to have a greater variety where maybe we will greet each other by just arching the eyebrows. When we say hi to each other and go, "Hey, how are you?"
Right.
And it goes no further, and we show that care and we show that emphasis with that gesture. Or we could probably come up with something else where we say, hey, we put our hands to our chest and we say, what a pleasure it is to see everybody. And I was at a meeting the other day, a Zoom meeting, and everybody was just kind of waving. And so I think it's all evolving. I think one of the things we'll see is maybe athletes fist bumping or elbow bumping and so forth. What's striking is that oftentimes it is the sort of athletic elites, and sometimes even politicians, that set the standard for the rest of us to say, oh, it's okay. So when we see the athletes that we admire, and gosh, they hug each other, and sometimes after they win, they actually kiss each other on the cheek, and it's like, well, we didn't do that in the '60s and the '70s, but the athletes do it, so it's okay. Eventually, we will gravitate towards those things, and maybe within 2 years we'll be right back to where we were with the handshake. But I think people realize that we need to be more circumspect, and but it's really in the middle of an evolution right now, and nobody really knows what it will look like.
I totally agree. I agree with you. I hope that it comes back. I like that emotional connection. I'm from Louisiana. We hug everybody. We don't even have to know you. We'll give you a hug. So
Exactly. And I've been through Louisiana. I've sat in the counters where they come up to you and say, "Honey, what can I get you?"
can I get right?
And they're stroking your arm, and I
Yeah.
and I and I love that. And I think eventually we will return to that. But I think there's things that we need to be that we need to be concerned about. We just passed, I think, 90,000 deaths. So we're going to be very mindful about space, but we're also going to be mindful about touch. And this is not this is a serious issue in that we as humans, we love touch. Children need to be touched. We know that, I mean, if you think about it, hospitals hire nurses to sit with preemies and just stroke them because the physical stroking, what we call the haptics of stroking, helps them to grow up more robustly. That's how important it is. So this isn't minor. You know, when we shake hands, when as in Louisiana, when you give your buddy that hug, there's that dopamine release that is powerful that says, I'm not just saying we're buddies, we're really buddies. And you feel that energy. You know what I'm talking about. And there's an absence to that. And we haven't had that absence for a very long time. So we will have to accommodate what is that middle ground.
Now you're an expert in body language and these types of instances. So what would you recommend? Here's the big part of it. There are people out there who aren't as worried about giving that handshake or aren't as worried about giving that hug, but they're not going to be sure that the other person is on their level. Is there anything we can look for in body language to kind of feel that person out before we extend the hand or offer that hug? What can we look for in body language?
You know, it's that's a great question, and the one thing that we should use, and both the smile and the arching of the eyebrows, which is our exclamation point that says, "Hey, hi, how are you?" And that's powerful. I think, how many times have you or I have gone to meetings and said, "Hey guys, I'm nursing a cold, so I'm not shaking hands." I bet I've done that 5-6 times as an adult, and no one seems to be bothered by it. And I think everybody's appreciative of it. So I think we're just going to have to own up to that and say, "Hey, I've got some health concerns, or I've got children at home or whatever." And I think eventually we will work this out, where rather than extending that arm out, we're going to keep it closer together. We've looked at various samples of where people come in and they say, "Good morning, everybody," and there's that chest touch. We've looked at others where they keep their hands together and they say, "So very good to meet you," without having to further explain. We've had others where they put their hands behind their back and they say, "It's an absolute delight," and without having to further explain. I think most people that have that level or social intelligence realize that this is very unusual. That it's not just us we're keeping safe; it's the little children we have at home. It's the elderly parents. I can tell you, with elderly parents in their 90s, my biggest concern is getting them contaminated.
Right.
So.
So you're saying maybe there's also a component of, like you said, somebody who's walking in the room and might be talking while putting their hand on their chest, showing maybe I feel affection or grateful that you're here, but I'm not going to touch you. Or people who put their hands behind their back are just kind of in a body language saying, "I'm not going to touch you."
These are called honorifics. And I think there are a lot of ways, in Europe, in the old world, you clicked your heels or you gave us a short bow. They still do that in London. And I'm seeing, because I've done so many of these things with business people, we're seeing from everything from making eye contact and everybody says hello to everybody, to "Hi everyone, I hope everyone's healthy." These are honorifics. We're still honoring people without the necessity to touch. And of course, we saw Vice President Pence and I forget who the other gentleman was, but they were kind of like giving air elbows. That's fine. The purpose of communication is to communicate. And if the person gets a message and you derive that psychological comfort, what I think we need to be careful with is that we are not forced by social pressures into doing things that we don't want.
Right.
Because if I don't offer you my hand, it's not because it's personal. It's because I have elderly parents and they are paramount. In my case, I just spoke with a lady the other day who somebody gave her a dirty look, and you know, she's going through cancer, she's going through chemotherapy, so she has both the mask and she's wearing a wig, and she's very concerned about her well-being. So you never know what the predicate is, but we just have to be respectful of it. And you know, and we will come back to that day when we have that hearty handshake that you get out west.
Right.
I remember, you know, I went to school in Provo, Utah, where, you know, you have this, what they literally call it, the Mormon handshake, which is a very powerful, strong, you know,
Right.
handshake, and all the athletes used it, and we will still have that. But we've got to, we can't be set in our ways. We have to find that fine medium. While we're trying to figure this out. But in the end, we are as an anthropologist, I can tell you that we are a species that loves touch, needs touch. You know, it releases oxytocin, it releases all sorts of chemicals that are powerful, that bind us and are bonding. And so we will forever need it because we have both the capacity to do it and we have the receptors in the brain to receive it. And so it's not like we can totally walk away from it.
It'll come back.
It'll come back.
All right.
And then Adam, you and I will walk down the street, we'll see each other, we'll arch the eyebrows, and we'll still give each other a hug.
That's right. That's right. When I'm over there, or you're over here in Texas, or even Louisiana, even better. I hope to meet you one day, but I appreciate the knowledge and experience and the kind of the aspect you were able to put on this for us. So thank you so much.
You bet. Good luck with everything, and I hope everybody stays safe. Yeah.
Same to you as well. I appreciate it.
All right, Adam. Take care.
You as well.
All right, my friend.